Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Inovia Conversation. I'm Steve Waltz.
And I'm Jeff Progelski.
And today's episode, Jeff, is all about CRM. How about Save My CRM? How's that sound?
Save My CRM. I like that. It's been a couple of weeks since we recorded one of these. So it's good to be back on the mic with you. I have been, guess what I've been doing, Steve?
Let's see, skateboarding.
Ooh, good guess. Thanks to almost breaking my ribs in Portland that I've taken a break from that. No, I have been out on a couple CRM projects, implementing CRM. So this episode, Save My CRM, is a great topic. I hopefully I'm implementing a system that will not need to be saved, but I bet listening to what you've got to say about saving CRM will definitely help guarantee my CRM implementations.
Yeah, it's a guarantee. I'll put it in writing for you.
Awesome. All right. So, and this is you're giving us a high level version of a presentation that you're going to be doing for the Dynamics user group community. Is that right?
That's right. So, I've done some professional development webinars for the user group community, for not just for the NAV-BC, but I'm doing another one. This one's for all the user groups, the AX, the CRM-UG, the GP, NAVUG, Power BI, basically all the user groups on a topic that I'm passionate about. Like you said, you were out there talking with customers about CRM, and, they all say what? Salespeople love CRM. They all can't wait for it. That Big Brother's watching them is cool, and I can't wait to put my activities in and make sure every opportunity is updated. Right? Are those the conversations you're having, Jeff?
Actually, that would be the opposite of the conversations, because I've actually been doing ride-alongs with salespeople, and let me tell you, I have had to do some serious arm twisting to just get them to the point where they'll let me ride along with them. And it's not because they listen to the podcast; it's because of that fear they have of what a CRM system means to a salesperson. Right?
It is scary. I was 15 plus years ago, I was that guy, right? Because, you think about when you I know you're more technical and got into pre-sales, but, when I started, it was all paper. You would have filing cabinets, you would have folders, you would follow up on a phone call, and it was kind of your information, like kind of a comfort food. They were your customers. Now, all of a sudden, everything that was proprietary to you, you're putting on your CRM, right? And then not only are you put it there, it's timestamped and people can see it. And it's like, oh, this is kind of new. Big Brother's kind of watching me. Never really paid attention before. Is that what you're kind of getting the feeling out there in the field?
Yeah, and I think it's certainly there's an aspect of sort of salesperson management that could be an important reason for companies to implement CRM. Ultimately, I think the best reason to implement CRM is because you're trying to capture some level of detail about the relationships that your sales team is building with your customers and prospects. And from that perspective, I've been able to get some salespeople to see the light on why it's important that we capture some of the information that a CRM system traditionally holds. But yeah, there's certainly been that Big Brother aspect that they're all afraid of.
Well, selling's emotional, and you kind of made a point there. Like, so if I get a customer, especially if I found it and brought him into the account, there's some emotional attachment to it, and then being on both sides of the fence, I get it, and what happens is that, salespeople get paid a salary, they get paid money to bring people in, but now it's time for the company to take care of that customer, because it doesn't really matter how great a salesperson you are if you can't deliver it on time, bill for it on time, or support it, right? And, it kind of gets lost in that track, but I think there's a conversation missing with some salespeople. And, those are some of the points that I'm going to be doing on the webinar. So I think you're kind of right on the money. But so what I can do is kind of get into a little bit of what I'm going to talk about and why, because I think, the why, because a lot of things I've done, for webinars for us or for the user group have been, cracking the CRM code. The 4 sales processes is there's a lot of things to help make it successful. But at the end of the day, like I was out a couple of weeks ago at a new customer, and the VP of sales told me that they just spent $100,000 on this dynamic CRM and it's junk. And I was like, what do you mean it's junk? And, I started asking the questions, well, why did you go to the CRM? What was your strategy for it? How did you, what was your, planning process? And he just had a deer in the headlight look at me. And I'm like, oh, there's kind of some of the answers, right? to what's going on. But I think a lot of times people just buy the software thing. It's going to fix things, right? It's like having a bad marriage, like having kids are going to fix it. And it really doesn't go well. So, you do a lot more when the conversations of like once it's sold and helping them get it implemented. But do you feel the conversations by the time it gets to you have all been addressed, or do you feel like you're just kind of like all over the map trying to like piece things together from the leadership team, from the sales management team to the sales team?
Yeah, I would say that a common thread that I've discovered, at least in my small sampling, is there hasn't been a great deal of conversation about the why for to deliver to the people that are going to use the system. Senior leadership hasn't always been really great at telling them why, and I think then the perception goes to like it's the big brother perception. Like they don't think I'm doing my job. They think I'm out golfing every day or whatever it is that salespeople are supposed to do, and not selling. But so I think that's certainly an aspect that could help guarantee success of a CRM implementation, is if everyone understands the reasons and reinforcing, I think, that how important those relationships are that the salespeople have built with customers, and reassuring them that we're not looking for software to impersonate a relationship. We're just looking to document appropriately.
Right. And so like the first question I ask customers is, like you said, the why. What is the reason you're choosing it? And I tell you, an owner, a VP, it seems like, they it's for compliance, or they want to see what the salespeople are doing. And so this is why it blows up, because at the end of the day, management wants it for management. They want it for reporting, they want it for forecasting, and it just doesn't go well. If the mindset that's the mindset of a salesperson, Jeff. We talk about all the time. Bring deals into the sales pipeline, right? Work the deal through the pipeline. Win it, lose it, go on the next one. It's pretty simple. If you build your CRM to do that, you have a chance. And then if you build it because the manager or the VP went to some session and saw the funnel and says, "Oh, I want that," and then and for some reason I've never understood it, being on both sides of the fence, right? Everybody wants to know what the salespeople are doing. I've never had a salesperson ask me, "I wonder what the accounting folks are doing. I wonder if Sally posts more than Bob," right? And it's just a different part of the company, because sales is passion driven. You think about it, Jeff. If you had a bad attitude and just kind of a complainer and a whiner, could you sell? You really, it'd be difficult, wouldn't it?
It really would be, yes.
But if you're posting transactions or doing receivables or sitting behind a computer doing that, can you do your job that way? And
I would guess yes.
Yeah, you can. Obviously,
couldn't, though.
People don't want to talk to you, but you can still do your job. But in sales, it's kind of performance based, and a lot of things that companies think when they do it that way, and that's why the 2/3 failure rate is so high, is because they're doing it for the wrong reasons. Because I learned a long time ago, that unless you own something, it doesn't get done. You cannot force adoption. Okay. A majority of the companies I talk with view it as a tool for management, and it's not. You can get some benefit, but it's not. Well, first off, it's not. If you have a poor sales team, it's not going to fix it. And I was surprised when I first started doing more conversations about it, and it's like, how if you have a poor performer that doesn't follow up or has a bad attitude, how's that going to fix it? It's just a piece of software, right? And it doesn't really address the sales experience aspect of it. So, I think what is missing a lot, and it's kind of scary in the CRM world that we're going to, or just, in the data world that we're in, is that the value of having that seasoned professional, that guy that's been there, that guy or girl that's been selling for a long time, sitting next to the new hire. If you're outside sales, riding along with them. Hey, Sally, what's the purpose of the call? I'm just checking in. And everybody likes to make fun of me here, right, Jeff, when we say just checking in, right? It's okay. Do you have, what's your purpose for the call? So, why are we here? What's the goal of the call? What's your plan next step? To have that veteran salesperson with you, is so important, because even though we automate these processes in CRM, they still need to know how to sell. And I think that is kind of being lost a little bit in this. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I certainly think you bring up a good point there. And it is something that I've observed through the CRM implementations that I'm working on now. Right.
And so when we all know that the adoption rate is poor. So I ask, who's the CRM for? Is it for management or is it for the salesperson? If it's for management, it's going to fail. Okay. The question that needs to be asked, will this help the salespeople bring in more deals, work the deals, and close deals? Period. I mean, I call it, if you think about like your Outlook and your cell phone, right? We talked about this on a podcast before, right? We have deals in our mind that should be in CRM, and we can work it through there. So if it's easier to work it through Outlook and my cell phone, then I will, because CRM has to be for the salesperson first. Okay. And, one thing that you brought up too is that, the customer relationship. There's a couple things that I feel that when I'm talking with customers is that there's a couple things that should be assumed. One, when people say, oh, we're trustworthy, well, trust should be assumed. And hopefully you're taking care of the customer should be assumed. So, is it assumed that salespeople are hunting for new business, bringing them in the pipeline, working the deals? Kinda. So if you build it for that first, with in mind that you can enhance the customer experience secondary, it tends to go well. So and I love asking people, so what is CRM to you? And do you feel that some people think it's almost like another salesperson? Like you will just automate this and it's like having a digital salesperson?
Yeah, I think there's as I've been working on these projects, calling, riding along with salespeople in their day to day, and a lot of times, they explain my presence in this in a sales meeting, like, oh, this is a consultant who's helping us with the CRM. So I've had discussions with the clients of our clients and about their CRM systems. And it's strange. I think every conversation I've had, they use CRM differently. So the idea that, CRM could be a salesperson, I think in an ideal world, maybe if you've got a system that's really humming, it could lead to producing more sales, like an additional salesperson. Right. But ultimately, I think it depends on if it's useful for the salespeople, like you said.
Well, it's a tool, and you kind of said it. So, everybody uses it differently. A salesperson will use it differently than a sales manager. The leadership team will use it different than the sales manager, and then people in other divisions will use it for other things, right? And so the discussions are is that you have the thing called the 80-20 rule. You got the 20% of the salespeople that make 80% of the sales. 20% of your customers bring in 80% of your business. And if you think about like other groups, like, Jeff, you're involved in, volunteer, not-for-profits or church groups, it's almost like the same people, right? Constantly doing things together. I call them the GSD people. Those people have the mindset that I got to adapt to change. I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to do it. This is going to help me. I remember when I first heard about Salesforce.com, I'm like, well, this is evil, right? It's like, Big Brother watching me. And then, as I kind of learned, hey, you know what? I can put all my extensions of phone numbers for all my contacts in here. Oh, wait a second. I can put all my notes in here. Oh, what's an opportunity? Oh, you mean I could actually take this and now make a plan for it? And that's it. Those are things that would help me, in my mind, sell more product and sell more stuff. So I made it sense that way versus the mindset of, hey, we want you to log everything in every time you do it, every second of the day. We want all your notes in there. The why is kind of missing, but I think you kind of got onto it. And Jeff, selling's emotional, don't you think? People buy on
It is.
an emotion and rationalize later.
Is.
It is. And salespeople deal with a high rejection rate. And I think one of the things, as I've talked with cracking on the sales CRM code and these other things are, you have this thing called opportunities. And everybody, CRM is really about your opportunities. That's what your pipeline is. So when you see that beautiful funnel, you have this sales pipeline where you stage out your cycles, right? Hey, how you doing? Can be your early entry into the funnel. Did you have a conversation for a fit? Can be your next stage. Did you do any type of demo or presentation? Could move it on and to the point where you deliver a proposal and then win or lose it, right? So that kind of, depending on what you sell in your cycle, that creates your part of selling.
The thing that I was most that I found most interesting is in terms of how different CRM can be from what it means from company to company. It turns out in one project, the most important information that the salespeople wanted included in their CRM tool was inventory availability. So we customized a screen in Business Central so that they had a 360-degree view of their customer from the standpoint of available credit, pending sales orders, back ordered equipment. All of that just in one space. And as we were rolling it out to these salespeople that, to be honest, weren't involved in the initial design phases of the solution, just because they weren't used. I mean, these were users that had not logged into Nav or Business Central before, so we had to create something. So we worked with the sales managers and their sales support team to bring up all the information, and when we showed it to them after trying to schedule ride-alongs for 3 or 4 weeks, when they said no, we're too busy, ask me later, too busy, ask me later, then we had to do I have to call your boss to get a ride-along? And then suddenly they made time. But then once we got over that initial fear, showing them the information that we gave and that we gave them in terms of the CRM tool, it was like, oh my goodness, this is really going to help. And then well, how much information do I have to enter? Everyone else, at my old company, we used CRM, and all I did was spend half my time in front of my computer entering in notes, and I think we found a happy medium for them. But like you said, it's got to be for the sales team. And does it shock you that one of my CRM implementations don't use opportunities at all in CRM?
Well, that's a good question, because as I've been involved in in the NAV world, BC, we got some people that manage a lot of relationships, right? Maybe they're reaching out to for donations and different things. So it is a little different, but it's think about it, if you are a company that is selling product or service and want to track your pipeline, I mean, how do you do that?
Right? You get opportunities in the system.
You have your opportunities in the system, right? And you have to have it staged out correctly. And so, it can be used for other things. So I've had people I talk with, they just wanted to manage their contacts and send Christmas cards out. I get it. And you can do that. And it's a great way to use your contact, because especially in Nav and BC, you got it in there at no charge when you bought the software. So it's there. So you can use it. And, I would say less than 20% of our customers actually use it. So, but I think what's cool, Jeff, is what you just said, is that it's the engagement. It's between you are engaging your sales team, right, versus dictating what you're going to do. And now they saw, aha, this is going to help me do my job, right? Like you said, it's like an aha moment versus you're going to do this. And the ride-alongs are kind of funny. I just remember, I was the guy that would, if I would ride along with reps, they were kind of nervous because why they're bringing Steve in. I wasn't the hatchet man. I was just there to help them. And but I think what it was is that they wanted to have a good day plan for you, right? And I was funny. Some of the best reps I work with, would have a nightmare day for you, like all these problems they wanted you to fix in their accounts. They wanted to use you while you were there versus show you, look how great I am. And so, and that can vary. So I guess, one of the things that leads to, Jeff, is this is a discussion, and I want to kind of get your take on it because, one thing I like to ask, where there's problems, what is your company culture like? Right. One thing that no one wants to speak to is the sales culture or the company culture. And what I mean by that is, you remember 10 years ago when the market crashed and 30% of orders just kind of stopped overnight?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, thin pipelines were exposed. And when you have a thin pipeline, all eyes are upon the pipeline. And there's more stress because once a deal gets put into that as an opportunity, people outside the sales organization start wanting to just beat on the sales team. What's going on? We got production. You might have leadership. You might have supply chain. All these different people that kind of come in that want to know, and try to give their advice, right? So, but if as a sales rep, let me ask you this, Jeff. So if you put an opportunity in and you're going to be hammered from the moment you put it in on where's that, what's going on, what about this, what about that? Are you excited about putting that opportunity in?
I am not. I'm afraid to put it in.
Well, because what happens is, I love the closing rate conversations. I remember when, probably shouldn't be saying this, but I remember when I met, when Tom brought me on board and was like, oh, we're 80% closing rate. I'm like, well, that's going to get blown up. Right. Because, it's different because we have a lot of current accounts and we manage it, but I get it. But to me, it's like, if you have a closing rate of 70 to 80%, do you think all the deals should be that are in CRM are actually in CRM?
I know for a fact they're not.
They're not, because if the focus is on that closing rate and I'm working my deal through my Outlook or my cell phone, maybe I met somebody at a trade show, right? And hey, I had a good conversation. All of a sudden they send you an email. Hey, let's have a talk. I'm not going to put that one in CRM because if I put it in, I'm going to be attacked. What's going on? Who's this? What's that? Right? So, and then if I lose it, that hurts my closing ratio. So if I wait and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm going to have this big conversation, boom, it's kind of put in there. And I think that we have one in our company that got to put in, I won't say the person's name. It was a nice opportunity.
What does it rhyme with?
Yeah, what's it rhyme with? Yeah, I'm not going to go there. But anyway, it happens. Sometimes you're talking and all of a sudden, boom, it accelerates and then it gets put in and like, some people are like, ooh, those are the fun ones, right? People put it in and you applaud it versus the people in, that got to deliver the product like, oh, crap, I should have known about that 3 months ago. So there's, a lot of that depends on your culture. And I'm from the school that your relationship between the salespeople and the frontline sales manager, there needs to be a trust, have each other's back. And if somebody wants to keep coming over from other parts of the company, they need to go through the sales manager versus the salesperson directly. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that you want to share.
No, I think that that company culture, absolutely. I don't know that it specifically relates to CRM, but certainly it's an important part of a CRM implementation because how does the sales team feel respected by the rest of the organization? Do they feel attacked? It's an important part of understanding, and that was something that I think I was fortunate in that the companies I was working with, there was apprehension from the sales team, but there was a great relationship between the sales people and the sales managers. So they were, they wanted to do the right thing. They were just a little bit nervous about it, and I think that the rest of the companies, culture as it relates to sales, we see some sales driven organizations that are, just like you go in there and it's amazing. They're like everyone from, the CEO down to the warehouse worker is figuring out like, how can we say yes to our customers when they ask us for something?
Right.
And that's, I think if you've got a sales team that is in an organization in a culture like that, then CRM implementation becomes pretty easy because everyone realizes the importance of the relationship with your customer, and they're doing everything they can. That's certainly, I think, the exception, not the rule in today's business world, but it's a goal that everyone should be shooting for, us included.
Right. I agree. And a lot of times, one of the comments you made is taking care of the customer. And when I was with the farm, I was an account manager for a long time. And I think what happens is if you, let's say you basically have a bunch of accounts, and this has been surprising to me over the last couple of years, how many companies I've talked to that are just content with their current base of customers. And they're not really hunting for new business. And then I'll talk with the salespeople and I'm like, you do what? I sound like a customer service representative. And I get it because I remember having these accounts that I would be in there all the time. And you feel like, you're their personal concierge. But a lot of that stuff could be done by a customer service person because I always say compensation drives performance. And, why would you have a highly paid salesperson kind of like being, the customer service rep? And, there's a point that you have to do that and have a process to take care of the customer. But, one of the things that I think is a good opportunity, and especially at the time that you're in there talking to customers about CRM or implementing it, is, let's talk about the role of your salesperson or the role of your account manager. What are they supposed to do? Because especially if they have just been taking care of customers and there was no CRM and they were left alone for years, with no really, I wouldn't say accountability, but, now all of a sudden all eyes are upon them in their mindset because they now have CRM and, they kind of like, not only do you want you to log it, maybe, they bought into a package to where we're going to change, our sales process. We're going to change this. So now their whole world's been turned upside down. Hey, I had a pretty good gig for 10 years. Now this CRM stuff came along and messed it all up. So I don't know.
Yeah.
You probably got some of those conversations, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. I did.
Yeah. So I think what also happens, Jeff, is Are you involved with any adoption plans by management for this, or have you even had those conversations?
I have no. I was brought in to implement after the decisions were made. Okay,
and one of the things that happens is that I remember with the pharma, and the intent was everybody put your customers in here. Everybody, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and you cannot force adoption. And there was really no plan in place. So what I mean by that is as you're working with your sales team and you're interacting with them and you're getting them to kind of help own this process, is that, all right, the first 6 months, we want to see, activities put into your top accounts or all of your accounts, or depending on it, there just needs to be a plan in place. And you have that plan by knowing how many customers you have and, how many people inside the customers. I really don't know, to our listeners, what that is, but, kind of a tiered plan, like, okay, but, the next 6 months, we want to have, 50% of our activities in there. We want to have opportunities in our top 3 accounts. Okay. Maybe it's 2 or 3 months. I don't know. And then, we tier that up to a year, until you get to the point where, okay, if once you work the kinks out and help them, the CRM to help them bring the deals in and move the deals out, they should be wanting to put it in. So, I think there's a lack of a plan by management for that adoption. And I don't know if if consultants in general know how to have those conversations. What are your thoughts on that?
Personally, I was not a good advocate in that way. I think because I wasn't involved in in that discussion at the beginning, there was a lot of assumptions made, and I think that you're right. As consultants, depending on when you're brought in, obviously, if you're brought in at the beginning, and you can start having, asking the questions that you started this podcast with about why are you doing it, and getting answers, I think that are thoughtful answers to those questions. So, why are we doing it? We're doing it because, we want our pipeline bigger. We have sales goals to hit. Those I don't think are thoughtful answers to that question. Questions like, we want to give our salespeople better tools to make them more efficient. We want to have a stronger connection to our customers, so which will improve customer service. Those types of answers, I think, get people thinking about CRM in the right way.
Well, I agree. And, when I was in DC, it was about a year and a half ago, and the owner of this company, I just, there's a couple conversations there'll be just, buried inside your memory to the day you die, and just the way that, he purely wanted it to watch the activities and with the salespeople. He wanted to micromanage and view it. And when we've had these conversations, and he kind of got to the mindset of a marketing mindset. Like, he just wanted to see he wanted to see this dollar amount in the pipeline, and he wanted to see this amount of activities every week. And, when we had the conversation, I said, at the end of the day, what matters? Well, my salespeople are working. I said, so at the end of the day, what really matters? Well, I want to make sure that, what I pay them, they're doing. I said, okay, let me ask you one more time. At the end of the day, what is the most important thing a salesperson needs to do for you? Close business, right? And so what would you rather have? A salesperson, let's say your top salesperson sold 3 times more than the next guy and only worked 20 hours a week and put in 5 activities. And then you had the second guy that actually sold 1/3 of what the guy did, but did everything you're thinking. What would you rather have? And he goes, the second guy. And I'm like, maybe I need to find a new job. And I'm like, and so in his mind, this person wanted to see the activities. And I'm like, I remember on the plane coming back, I'm thinking, there's a marketing mindset, which is clicks are good, right? Activities is good. Activity is important. But being in sales, Jeff, for over 30 plus years, closing deals is the most important thing. Am I off key on that? At the end of the day, isn't like selling stuff important for a company?
I would say yes. But again, keep in mind, I would always defer any sales related questions to you.
Well, because it's funny. Like, when I did sales training, when sales reps would beat around the bush, I'm like, you're a salesperson. They're expecting you to ask them to buy something. And they're like scared, like, okay, you kind of maybe sign this. Like, really? They kind of know why you're here. And when that happened, it just really kind of shook me up. And then I just realized all the conversations I had prior to getting up to the owner. Now it all made sense. Like, okay, because everybody else was like, yeah, I hear you, Steve. I hear you, Steve. Right? And I'm like, well, that guy was more worried about the activity and watching what they were doing versus selling things. And that kind of brought me to the mindset of like all this data. There's so much data out there. I call it the data dilemma. There's people that have 20 some sales reports, Jeff. Hey, they're trying to watch and measure things that they can't control. So, when I do presentations, I don't know if you do this at the user groups, I'll ask people, does anybody like use Excel spreadsheets? Is anybody addicted to Excel spreadsheets?
Yeah, like each because of in the current CRM project I'm working on, every member of the sales team, because they didn't have any CRM. Every single one of them had a different spreadsheet. So one of the interesting things we did was grab those spreadsheets and just everyone was struggling to maintain their own spreadsheet. And when all of this information and they didn't have access to their ERP system, so they were asking someone at the back office to send them data so they could create these spreadsheets that gave them some insight into their customers' inventory and sales patterns. And all we had to do was give them access to the ERP system in a way that was efficient for them, so they didn't have to click around and so a spreadsheet addiction. I thought that was just for accountants, but apparently it's for sales teams too.
Well, it's everybody. Everybody has their own mindset of how they want to see it, and and the hardest thing is that what is the management looking at, and if you make, because if in your mindset, if you have your own spreadsheets and they have their own, and I always like to ask this to a sales manager, can you manage and coach your sales team effectively from a spreadsheet? And the answer is normally no, because it shows you past activity, what's been done. Unless you're out there working with your salespeople, you really don't see the quality of the activity. And, I just remember when I would look at these activities in CRM, and it was like two sales reps. One guy was a rock star. The other person was, bottom third performer. And they both had identical things written in their activity. I met with so-and-so, and I showed them this deck, and they liked it. And the next step is I'll reach out to them next week. Well, I happened to work with both those people in those meetings. And the one rock star guy basically went on the LinkedIn sites, knew everybody that was going to be at the meeting, had a plan, was interactive, involved with them, and towards the end asked for a next step, got it, and picked a date out. Where the other person went in there, just read the PowerPoint presentation at the end, said, "What do you think?" "Oh, great. Okay. See you later." And they walked out. But if I'm reading that from a spreadsheet or my activity in my CRM, it looks identical, doesn't it?
It does.
And sales managers or people in the leadership or C-suite need to be aware of that, because I think what happens, it gives you this false sense that you're participating in it. If people look at spreadsheets and data all the time, especially the activity of salespeople, it's almost like they're part of the sales team and they're not. I've had some scary interactions with people. I'm like, you never left your desk. What did you do with that salesperson? Well, I read the reports the last 5 months. Oh, great. So you read the reports. So what does that mean? But a question I have when you're setting this stuff up, so I read this book. It's called Cracking the Sales Management Code, which I kind of stole for the Cracking the CRM Code by Jason Jordan, and had all these different sales metrics. Jeff, there was over 300 metrics of what you can measure in all these different reports, and this one thing stood out to me as I'm looking at all this data. It said, why do sales management groups or companies try to create activities on things they have no control over? Why do they try to control what you can't control? Because there's certain things you can control and certain things you can't. And then if you're going to measure something, the sole purpose of measuring it should be to improve it. And it was like a light went on. I'm like, man, I've been thinking that, but I just couldn't put it in context. And it's correct, right? Because if there's metrics out there, let's say, Jeff, I'm your sales manager. I say, "Jeff, I need you to go get me a $500,000 business in the next 2 months." What are you going to say?
I quit.
I quit. Yeah, sure. Let me put my cape on. Here comes a $500,000.
Yeah,
right out there.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to say how. Right.
Yeah, well, exactly. How? Can you control revenue? You really can't, right?
Right.
But what can you do? You can influence it. And I think that gets lost. And so when people set up the CRM or their sales stages, their cycle, or whatever they're trying to do in their process, you need to say, why are you going to, what are you measuring and why you're measuring it? Because like I said, if you're going to measure something that you have no control over, is that a good use of time and effort? Not really. If you want to measure something that you have a chance of improving. And one thing that a sales team can completely control over the sales rep is this one word. It's called activity. Right? You can control your activities. As a salesperson, Jeff, I put it this way. So Jeff is the busiest guy we have in a company. That person in your company that can't say no to people? That's Jeff, right? He's probably looking at his watch now. Steve, end this podcast now.
Right. I got places to be. I got places to be.
And I got other people running me ragged. Steve, get out. You're not the only one. But you can really kind of control activity. And I think that's kind of lost into it. I mean, did you notice that? Are you helping to put people putting plans together for them how to do the right sales activity, or is that even a discussion point for you?
Not part of our implementation at this point. Should be, but not.
And that's a good point. Like, when do you bring that in? I think we'll have future discussions on that, because when I would sit down with a sales rep or sales manager and they're struggling, because here's something typical. 70% of sales managers have not been trained on how to coach a salesperson. 70%. A lot of companies hire a good salesperson and make them a sales manager. So what does that make them? Manager of salespeople. They're no longer the salesperson. And if 70% of them have never been trained on it, they don't know how to flip the switch, right? They want to be super salesmen, do it. But I just remember talking this to a sales manager. So, what was that conversation like? Well, I told him that he had to hit his quota. I go, so what did the sales rep say? I said, I needed help with the quota. And so I said, what did you say? He said, I was too busy telling other sales reps they need to hit their quota. I was like, because he didn't know what to do, right? And he was struggling because he didn't know how to coach a salesperson. Like, okay, you're not hitting your numbers. Let's talk about that. What are you doing, right? Those are conversations. So in the mindset of putting together a plan for a company, so if you want to, I call it the business result. What do you want to do, Jeff? You want to increase revenue, or you want to increase your market share? What do you want to do, right? Can you control that? You can't, right? You can influence it. So what happens, there's three categories, and everybody skips the second one. So you have a business result, a sales objective, and a sales activity. So people think, okay, I want to increase revenue, so we'll just make more sales calls. Well, they haven't really defined what the sales call is going to be. Just go out and make more calls. So the sales objective is what is the call, or what is the activity supposed to be? So the objective is you can increase revenue by maybe new products, or maybe you have current products that are in the customers or in your arsenal that they've been considering. Maybe it just takes a lot more training because it's a high-tech product. Our new customers, or maybe we've lost some business because our customer service has been poor. But you basically identify the objective, and then you attach an activity to it. So let's say, activities can be things as maybe product training, or maybe just improve call planning on your part, or doing a demo like you just did before this call. More account planning, more prospecting calls. So let's say you identify, Jeff, you're a sales manager, and I was coaching this person, and he's like, okay, we need to increase revenue 15% this year. I said, well, great. What do you have in your bag of tricks to help do that? Well, we got a new product coming out. Okay, let's talk about the new product. Okay, so what is it going to take to get this product launched? Well, we have to have meetings and do training and so forth, maybe lunch and learns. Well, let's do that. So now you create an activity to do that, to basically do lunch and learns for the new product to increase revenue. So now you're kind of getting to a plan. You see what I'm saying? And I think that's kind of lost, in the CRM. That's where CRM can really help you. And if you don't have that plan, if you just need the check the box mentality. I was in healthcare, and I think of all these nurses. Once they went to the electronic health record, they had a checklist of things. They would just check off boxes. If CRM is check boxes, okay, I got to call the person back in a week. I sent them an email. Or I got to follow up with this person, check that box. Oh, I checked all the boxes. That's the activity mindset, right? Versus the result mindset. The plan that we just talked about gets you to the results mindset. So I know I've been rambling on here and taking a lot of your time.
I thought, Steve, this was just another example of the 80-20 rule, with you speaking 80% of the time and me shutting up 20% of the time.
So as I'm driving with my wife, who listened to our last podcast, she goes, Jeff used to talk a lot more. What happened? I said, I took over.
That's right. Well, hey, that is, you need results. We are, I mean, let's apply CRM to our podcast. Like, why are we doing it?
Yeah. The why behind,
not
the why
just to feed our egos, right?
Well, the why behind it, because we were told that would be a good idea if we had a podcast. That's the why.
Well, did our sales manager explain to us what he wanted exactly? No, he just he gave us some direction, and we took it from there. So I think that you bring up. I mean, this is CRM. Every single organization relies on its sales team to stay in business, and the fact that we have a piece of software that can help us in this. I mean, it's not that every organization needs CRM, but I think every organization could benefit from some aspect of CRM. So it's an important topic.
And it is a piece of software, Jeff. And I think that kind of gets lost sometimes, right? You just purchased a piece of software that is a tool to help your sales team. Okay, it's not the end all be all, and because. The thing that you probably heard a lot, how do I get my salespeople put this stuff in? Right.
Yep.
And I call it the 3 points. And this can really help, because I remember in previous jobs they wanted a book written. Well, the 3 points is the who, what, and the next step. Who did you talk with? What did you talk to them about, and what's your plan next step? I met with Jeff. We talked on a podcast. Our next step is to have another podcast. That's all you need to put in there. And then on your pipeline discussions, hopefully, I don't know when you're talking with these other companies, that they need to have either a weekly, biweekly, or monthly discussion on their opportunities, right? That way you can kind of go through the opportunities. So it's not just visual, there's actually conversation on that. So I think sometimes that gets lost, is that, and I'm surprised, I would say probably at least a third, if not a half, of the companies I've talked with just put it all in there and they don't have any discussions one-on-one time, either with the rep and the sales manager or as a team. And that's just, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. So, all right, no time. Anything else you think we should tell our listeners about it, or?
I think you've given us a lot of food for thought. I think hopefully people will be, not sure when this podcast will be live, but hopefully people will get a chance to see your presentation for the Dynamics user group community, to hear even more about this. And I think that's it for me. Anything else for you?
I think it should do it. This session is called Save My CRM. It'll be on November 19th, I think at 1 o'clock Eastern time, or 11. Maybe I should have checked the time out more. But it will be recorded, so you can be able to go, if you're a member of the user group, you'll be able to listen to it there, or obviously you can re-listen to the podcast. So as we like to always say, you can find us on social media. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Twitter. And we are on Facebook. And Jeff, I think we're now up to about 22 listeners. I was at Summit. I had a couple people come up to me and tell me they listened. And when I was actually at the Northern Michigan user group last week, and I had at least one person that was a non-relative tell us that they were listening to the podcast. So we appreciate everybody listening. And until next time, have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.